Here's what we're going to do right now. We're going to kick this meetup off because it looks like it is the top of the hour. So let me just share my slide deck here and just going to check some quick notes there. Okay, cool. So welcome everyone to the Power BI Modern Excel User Group Meetup. This is the August edition of the Excel track for this one here. We are doing things like the Insider Fast channel on Microsoft. We're releasing our August release before July is even over. And you don't get that opportunity very often, but Chandoo is coming to us from the future, which is pretty darn awesome. So, I mean, not that Chandoo's not always coming from the future, because he's like, what are you, like 20 hours ahead of me anyway? Yeah, something like that. Yeah. At any rate, it's a cool flavor for this. So we're going to be starting into Chandoo's presentation in about 5 minutes. But before we do that, we're going to do our natural thing for sponsors and whatnot. So the first thing I want to do is throw a big shout out to a sponsor, SkillWave, which is the company that Matt Allington and I run, which teaches you how to build business intelligence using Excel and Power BI. Some of the best training on the planet for business intelligence tools can be found at SkillWave. You should definitely check it out. We've even got a sale going on until July 31st. I want to acknowledge Excel Guru, which is my company. You'll notice for those of you who have been following me for a while that there is a new logo in place there. I'll talk about that in a second. And also a shout out to my Monkey Tools software, which helps you build better data models faster, which is going to be part of the course that I'm going to be teaching in Mississauga in a couple of weeks, which will be pretty cool. Our next meetups coming up are going to be resuming our regular cadence for this. So we're having Alice Drummond is going to be coming from Australia on August 19th. That's our normal place for our Power BI track here. And she's going to be doing some Power BI data storytelling. It's going to be some cool stuff there with the Great Barrier Reef. Unfortunately, I'm going to be missing that one because I'm going to be in an airplane coming home from Mississauga. But Joseph Yates is going to be hosting the entire evening there. And then for our next Excel track, we are going to be on, and this is just crazy, but Friday, September 2nd, starting at 10 p.m. in the evening. This is what I'm going to spend my Friday night doing, is being there for to host my buddy Gasper Kamenchuk, who's going to be coming back from Slovenia in order to give us something really cool and interesting. It's going to be involving, I'm sure, Power Pivot and Power Query. I'll get the title on that one a little bit later on, but just be aware this is on a different day and a different time to try and make it conducive for Gasper's schedule. If you haven't seen it yet, we have a brand new website at Excel Guru. We've got an updated logo. We've completely overhauled the site to make it a lot, a lot more modern. It doesn't look like 2006 anymore because it is 2022. So if you haven't seen it, you should definitely go and check out excelguru.ca. My live bootcamp, there are still seats available for the Mississauga location if you happen to be in Toronto and want to come for some in-person training. As mentioned before, we've actually got 4 people right now, so it is definitely going to be up close and personal. Still an opportunity to join. Don't miss out on that. Or if you prefer, you can actually come to visit me in Auckland, New Zealand. I'm going to be there for Definity which is at the end of November, and I will be leading the same SSBI bootcamp program in Auckland for a 3-day post-con as well. So that's another opportunity you have, and the links are already posted in the slide deck, which is on the Meetup site if you need to get to those. I also want to let you know that we have a new semester starting of my Excel Fundamentals Bootcamp. I know a lot of people that come to this particular session here have some hardcore Power Query and Power Pivot skills, but if you've got people on your team or you feel like you really need to, to get introduced to some of these things and some of the core fundamentals skills of Excel, this is a great program to do it. It's got a whole bunch of training and coaching, live Q&A and Ask Me Anything sessions, full recording of everything that we do as well. Once again, it is also on sale at the moment, so you should definitely go and check that out too for either you or your team if you figure that this would be appropriate for you. The recording for every one of our VanPUG sessions does get hosted on the SkillWave YouTube channel. I will be posting it within 48 hours, and the link is here. That's our short link to get there. As well, you will find on the SkillWave YouTube channel my weekly Monkey Shorts video where I do my 3 minutes or less of technical content. Today we had a cool tip on accessing Power Query documentation by just hitting enter in the right place. So if you haven't checked these out, you should definitely go and take a look. Totally free training, bite-sized, and well, I'm pretty proud of it, and the monkey's pretty happy there too. So Last thing I'm going to say is if you would like to come and speak at VanPUG user group, we would love to have you. Please fill out the survey here and we will get you on our stage. We love hearing about anything cool and interesting you're doing with Excel, Power BI, Power Query, Power Pivot, or anything else on the Power platform that ties into these technologies, whether it's, Flow or Power Automate, whatever it is today, and those different kinds of things. So if you're interested, please fill out the contact form and we'll get in touch with you. And on that note, Chandoo, that's the end of my slide deck. So I think it's time to hand the torch over to you, my friend, and let you tell us about impossible but not impossible Power Query trickery for charts now that John's watching closely. Is that
Yeah, I think irrespective of what's going to happen, it is still impossible because the fact that I'm doing August meetup in July, that is impossible. So
that just makes everything possible right there, I think.
Yeah, so nothing can beat this, but let's just get into my screen here. And while the title is a little bit cheeky to say that we're going to make impossible charts, these are really like you could make them in Excel previously, but because we're going to use Power Query, it's going to add a whole different spin on how we can approach Excel charts for something that is a little bit tricky. So here is the file. Although I'll provide a copy of this file, I'll share the link in the chat later on. It's not important that you have the file. You can just follow along with your own data anyway. I'm just going to figure out how to take my. OK, that's there. All right. So the concept is pretty simple. Here I've got a chart that kind of looks like a column or a bar chart. Let's just call it column chart. But if you look at the widths of the column, they are inconsistent. And I'm going to zoom down a bit more so we can actually focus on this little guy here. And the idea is we're looking at budget versus actual for some projects, again, made up data, alpha, beta, gamma, delta, etc. And then the budgets are the blue bars and the actuals are these orange colored bars. Anytime the actual is under the budget, I want to show how much it is under in a yellow color here. Likewise, anytime it is over, I want to show it in a gray color like that. Now, if you want to make something like this in Excel using the menu options that are available, we could kind of guess that this would be either a stack or a bar chart, or a stack or a cluster kind of a chart. But what we have got here is kind of like a mix of both. And if you Google for like how to get this mix, in all likelihood, you would land on John Peltier's website where he would describe how to do a Marimekko chart like this. But I'm going to show you another way of kind of cheating our way to get this using Power Query. So first, we need to understand some basic concepts of how Excel charts work and then kind of take it forward. So we're going to manually build this and then we will use Power Query to build it. That way you can see the power of automation, learn some really cool M functions and see how everything comes together. So here I've got some data and what I want to do is I want to use this data to make this chart. If I just select this much and insert a column, I'll get this. But here the fun part is we want to show a little bit of bar here. Likewise, where it is under, we want to show something. Also, we want to take this guy and expand it twice as much as the budget. That way, budget is the benchmark, actual is the more one, so we want that to have more width. So that's really what we are going for. One way to kind of think about this is, I'm going to Control-C this and put it in a new page here so we can kind of play with this. Imagine if I have got actual 2. And this is nothing but that data. And then if I select all of this, insert a column chart, I'll get this. Now I'll select one of these, format, and set the gap width to 0%. So everything is basically
overlap.
What happened there? Oh yeah, so this we'll just set this to maybe 50% and then yeah, the overlap is the one. OK, so we'll do this. And then if I match these two colors, we kind of cheated it now. So we have 2 columns exactly same color and with a little bit of clever labeling, you wouldn't really know that one of them is half as much as other. You would think that they're actually column charts, but the columns have different widths going on. Okay, and then we can, but the problem is now we want to stack things on top, and you can't really mix cluster and stack in Excel. So this is where instead of this kind of a structure, if I lay out our data in a different way, this layout looks a little bit funny, so I may actually get it wrong when I try to manually lay it out, but we will work our way for this. So here is the actual layout for this. This is how it looks like. And we are gonna just do it for a couple of them, not all the 6 projects, because the calculations, if you want to make formulas for everything, they can get a bit clunky as well. So we'll just say project, budget, actual, and then we do need over and under values. And then we'll just say A and B for now. And for each project, we basically need 4 values. So we'll put it like this. And then the budget for the project is 100 and actually is 80 and then 80. And in this case, it is under, so we will put 20 here. And then we are going to flip this same thing here on the other side, 100, 100. And because it's over, we are just going to say 20 and 20 here. OK, this looks, as I said, this is going to look quite clumsy, but once we make a chart, you will kind of understand where I'm going with this. So we will get something like this when I select all of this and make a chart. At this point, if I go and set my gap to 0, I'll get a picture like this. I think I've got my things in the wrong place. I'm gonna, oh no, just do 2020 here. And then delete that, like this will put 20. So yeah, we will get this kind of a picture from that data. So here what we have is a project that has 100 budget and 80 actual. So it's basically, I think my labeling is also wrong, but you get the idea here. So if I can take my raw data of this format, A, B, then 100, 80, and then 80 and 100. So this is my raw data, and somehow transform it into this shape. I can generate this chart. This is our first impossible chart. This is what we're going to make in Power BI, Power Query. I'll show you the second one also, because the second one is a little bit more interesting, is how we can create a ranking chart like this, where I have got 3 products at point 1 in time. And then I want to show how their rankings have changed over time. This is again a made up chart, but here I have got actual examples of product ranking in 2021, 21 and 22. So where you have got A, B, C, D, E, F, and then you can kind of track them through the time using this kind of a metro map kind of a thing. So if time permits, I'll explain how we can make this one as well, but both of them follow the same pattern, and we will see. So this is my budget versus actual data, and this is that, and this is the manual sheet where we are manually making these charts. And here I've got some data sets. So now that I have kind of set the outline, because this is impossible charts, there is no easy way to explain the concept. So if some of you are confused, that is fine. Feel free to put a message or something, and I'll try to check that. But because we haven't actually covered anything, we are only just setting the tone for this. We are gonna go and do it. So here I have got some data where I have got my project budgets and actual. And our goal is take this and then transform it in such a way that we basically take this kind of a format and make it like that. That's really what we are doing, so that we will get that kind of a picture. So we will go to the data sets, select this data. This is where, if those of you who are a little bit adventurous and following along, you can type some random values in a cell, basically 3 columns, project, budget, and actual. Just put any numbers there and then make it a table. And once it is in a table format, you can go to data from table range to push this into Power Query. So we're going to do that. I have already done all the transformations here. You can see that, that thing is already built up, but we're going to go from scratch again to see this here. Now let's just say this is where again a little bit of Power Query understanding could be helpful. I don't know how much of Power Query those people who are attending this meetup are familiar with, but given that Ken organizes this quite often, it's safe to assume that most of you are familiar with the fundamentals, but Power Query can be used to change the shape or nature of data using step-by-step transformations. So here is my data. Let's just say I don't really care about anything. I just want to duplicate actual column. I could, for example, right click on it and duplicate the column and I'll get a duplicate column. So this is really that initial example that I showed where I have got one budget, two actuals, and if I color match, I get one column that is an arrow, second column twice as much wider. We didn't want this, so I'm just gonna undo that step. Let's say instead of duplicating, I want to take every row and then duplicate the row itself. So I want to have two rows of the exact same values. So this is where what you could do is you could, for example, add a column, click on custom column. And we are going to do a little bit of custom columns in this particular examples because we do need to use this to get what we want. We could use the menu options, but they'll get a little bit clumsy and more long-winded, and some of the steps are not even possible. For now, I'm just going to leave that there. And then in the curly bracket, if I just say 1, 2, and those of you who cannot read this, the curly bracket, this notation here is basically how you make a list in Power Query. So I'm making a list that has two elements, 1, 2, and OK, and I get a list for each row. So I can see that the list has those 1 and 2 values here on the screen. Right. So instead of seeing the list like that, now if I expand this to new rows, because the list expands, every row must expand, and the second row also gets the same value. So here you have got 1 and 2. And the corresponding values here are all exact replicas. So this is the basic technique through which we can just zoom up a list, right? What we want is, I will just leave this as a connection for now, so we can come back here and then kind of understand what we are trying to go for. This is the shape that we are trying to create in Excel. Maybe I'll take a screenshot of this so I can kind of overlay this when we are in Power Query. And all right, so edit this. And then this is my expanded data. Again, I showed this approach because I wanted you to understand how the lists work and how you can make your own arbitrary lists. But we don't need this either, so I'm just going to undo all of this, go back to the original state of data. So now let's just bring up this this image. OK. So I hope you can see both of them there. This is my data and this is the format I want to go. So for each project, I want to expand it down 4 rows. The 4th row is always going to be blank. Just imagine that as a box. And then the first row contains budget, second row contains actual, second column. And then the third column contains over, fourth column contains under information. So we do need to calculate over or under things first. So we're going to do that. Given these two, I can select these 2 columns like this using Shift and then go to add column, standard arithmetic, and then just do a subtraction. I'll get the answer here, which is basically that. Now, what we want is if it is over one column, if it is under another column, but the subtraction will give you both values in one place. We just need to split this up. Again, if you are a little bit familiar with the M language, you can just go and write the custom column calculations for this. Because we will do this as part of the process, we might as well just get started. So instead of this menu option, we are going to go and do a custom column. And we'll just say over. And then this over would be actual minus budget. Now, if I just do it like that, I'm going to get either positive values or negative value. What I want is I want this to appear only if the value is over. Otherwise, I want this to be blank or null. So we can use if and then kind of check for is actual greater than budget, then this, else null. And so we will get something like this. Over would be 120 minus 100 as 20, but wherever it is under, it's not going to have anything. It's just going to null out that value. We need an exact reverse of the same thing. We will do that one more and then call this as under. And here again, if budget is greater than actual, then budget minus actual, else null. So we get kind of like mirror columns. One of them will be positive or null. The other one will be positive or null, depending on what it is. You could have added the same thing in Excel if you're not really comfortable doing this. But if you're not comfortable doing custom columns, you would not be able to do the next steps anyway. But hopefully, you have done this. Let's bring up the picture again. So far what we have achieved is we calculated these four guys and then that. And now all I need to do is kind of stagger them in such a way that budget has one set of rows, actual has two set of rows, and then there is a null row in the middle. You will understand why all of these are required once we go back to Excel and make a chart. So at this point, we can, for example, do the earlier method that I showed, which is I can make a custom column. We'll just leave that there. And then if I want all the numbers from 1 through 4, I can do 1.4. And that'll give you all the numbers 1, 2, 3, 4. And then expand it because I do need 4 rows for everything. But the problem with this approach is it's going to duplicate the values. Whereas we don't need duplicates, we do need either the value or the null blanks here. So this list approach is not terribly suitable for this. We can use it, but then we will have to do a whole bunch of conditional columns to blank out the values where we don't need them. So I'm gonna go back in time and then do the other thing, which is we'll do a custom column. And instead of a list in the column, how about if I put a table? So this is where my Power Query M language syntax understanding is a little bit rusty. So sometimes I just go and Google or search for help. A good thing for you is there is auto suggest here. So essentially the formula that we are looking for is table from columns. And once you find that, if you hit enter, it's gonna put that. Sometimes Power Query IntelliSense is like dump sense, so it'll repeat the words there. But essentially we are looking for table.from columns. And if you don't know exactly how this works, you can, at this point, if you click on the Learn About Power Query Formulas, that'll take you to Microsoft Help website. You can see some syntax and examples there and then learn it. As I said, this is something that you may not use it on day-to-day basis, so there is no value in remembering or kind of memorizing this. You can just search it up. This is why I have got a notepad file with the formulas. I'm just going to copy paste it and then kind of walk through the logic here. So this is the formula. And we'll call this as table for now. And let's just expand the screen so we can see. This is my column name, and I'm generating a table where the table has 4 rows. So each row is one list. And then this is my column names list. So the table would have 4 rows and 5 columns. Name it title B, A, U, O. B for budget, A for actual, U for under, O for over. And then the rows themselves are, it will have a first row would have null, budget, null, null, over, like this. It again looks clumsy, but essentially the lists have either null value or budget value or over value like that. This way the thing expands and we will get this kind of a thing. So that is the table from rows thing. when you are constructing the list, you could put 1 to 4, 1, 2, 3, 4 like that, or you could also refer to the available columns to bring the corresponding column value for each row, and then that can be used. So this is that. And when you click OK, earlier we had list, now we have table. Let's just take a look at one of these tables. So you can see the table here. For example, for the first row, this is how the table looks. Title has the title value, and then this is there. These are here. And then the last row is always null. So this is just basically empty row. You might think, why is the title here? Why is it not up there? You will understand it once we make the chart, because we want the label to be centered across the columns. I had to kind of move it to the second value rather than the first value. So that's why it is like that. But that's really what it is. In case of very first row, we have only under values. So that's why over is null. But if there is other way around, you will probably have that. So once this table is there, if I expand this table and uncheck this and get all the columns, I'll get the fully expanded table version of the data. At this point, we no longer need any of these. So I can kind of, I'll probably leave the project. I'm gonna select these columns and then remove so that we will get this kind of a data. I'm gonna name this as _demo. And let's load this up to Excel. This is just a connection, so I'll just set this as table in a new worksheet, and we will get an expanded table like this. The beauty of this is built through Power Query. So if and when my data set changes, so for example, my epsilon budget is not 150, we changed this to 170. So I modify this value, I come here, right click, refresh. I'll see 170 come up here automatically. The calculations will change and everything works nicely. At this point, you just select these 4 columns, insert a stacked column chart, and then you'll get this nice picture. And then we're gonna, I think it kind of did something funny, because if you see, it was picking from row number 2. So I'm gonna do once again, make sure that the heading columns are selected. And expand this. So we'll get this, and with a little bit of formatting, which is take away the gap width so everything is touching each other, and then recolor it. So for example, I'm going to go with yellow color for my budget. So format this as yellow and green for actuals. We don't need to do 2 colors because they're same series. So once you color one thing, other will automatically color. And then the overflow as light green. And underflow here as dark yellow. We'll get a nice picture like this. We can take out the legend, and then for the axis labels, we want to show the project name. So I'll right click, select data, and then edit this and point to the title column. And we'll get this. Because the title value is in the second cell, it kind of gets centered. If it is in the first cell, it will go left and it looks a little bit odd. So that's where that thing comes up. There is a spacer row. This is why there is a gap in the middle. So if this spacer row is not there, then what happens is everything will touch each other. Then you'll get like a kind of a heat map or tree map kind of a picture, which is not really what we want. We still want to go with the columns. On top, you can add your legend or anything and then customize it. But this is the basic working where we are using Power Query to introduce null rows or space out the data or change the shape of the data in a more seamless and easy fashion rather than this. I'm just going to read some questions, if any, but I'm not really sure how.
Chandoo, I don't think there's any questions so far. I think it's. I mean, the only comment really is it's odd to see a table with so many holes in it rather than all filled in, because normally, yeah. I mean, of course, we promote data that's pretty consistent, but that's charting, right? I mean, it's just sometimes it's weird like that.
Yeah, we want to use Power Query because the thing with Excel charts is if Excel cells are truly blank, the chart has a different behavior. You can kind of replicate some of it by forcing NAs or anything, but it gets a little bit more weird if you get into XY charts and everything. So because Power Query null is technically blank in Excel, but within Power Query, I can type null in my transformations or whatever, and that is controllable through formulas for us. Whereas in Excel, there is no way for us to force a null in a cell. For example, if I say 10 greater than 20, double quotes is the closest we can get, but for a chart that is still a value, so it is it can get treated differently. It's not technically blank. So a blank is just nothing in the cell, whereas there is no way for us to get that. Through Power Query, we can force it. So that is the one way in which we can overcome. Probably, there are other ways to do it as well. Some of it, I mean, this kind of a chart, you can also make it with formulas, and especially with the newer formulas like stack and take, etc. You could kind of easily come up with something like this through formulas. But because Power Query is more universally available, it gives you a chance to get a little bit deeper. OK, so let's just, given that we do have some more time, I thought, we'll take a look at this one because this is a little bit more interesting. Again, it is all linked to the data. So if my data set changes, so my product data here is what I'm using. If it changes, I just refresh this and then the calculations here will change. So let's just test this out by 5,000 is our highest. I'm gonna take one of these guys and make them 5,420. So E is my new product. And if I go here, refresh, you'll see the pattern has immediately changed. So this one here uses XY chart to kind of create that. Again, this requires a little bit more understanding of how XY graphs work, but not impossible, especially if you have followed along all this while and nodding, you would find the next bit just as fun. So let's just do a little bit of manual exercise first. If I want to draw two lines, but in the space of X and Y, that's where the XY charts are helpful. We'll do a little bit of illustration. So let's just say this is my X axis and that's my Y axis. Let's just take only two products. So we have got A here and then B here. And then A here and B here. So in year one, product A is the lower ranked product, but it kind of climbed up to higher rank and then B kind of went down. So what we want is we want a line to go like this, a line to go like that. We could think of this as drawing two lines. And if I have got two products, I wouldn't even bother with Power Query. I'll just draw two lines and call it a day. But if I've got 10 products or 5 products and then 3 years, then essentially you have to draw 5 lines or 5 sets of lines, each going 2. But your data is seldom maintained in this format. All you would have is year 1 sales, year 2 sales for the corresponding products. That's really how you would have your data. So I wanted to go and use Power Query to generate all the necessary logic for the lines. So while we can think of these as 2 lines, if you get a little bit clever, you could still think of them as 1 line. The way this works is, for the sake of simplicity, we'll just assume these as 0, 1, 1, 1, 2, 2, 1, 2, 2, and 2, 1. Simple XY coordinates. So we could think of a line that goes from 1, 1 to 2, 1. And then the line needs to jump to either here or there and then continue its journey. So after 1, 1 to 2, 1, if I have got blank row, and then my next coordinate is 1, 2. Oh, sorry, this should be 2, 2. 1, 2, and then 2, 1. Because there is a blank row in the middle, what XY chart does is it kind of skips the line segment that goes from here to there. So you could imagine there is a dotted line going here. That line segment never gets drawn because there is a blank row. So this is how XY line charts work, not the regular line charts, XY line charts. Whenever there is a blank, it will just skip out and then step ahead to the next point. So that's how, even though there are two lines, we can still draw this as one line. I'll demonstrate this with a simple concept here. We'll have X, Y. So we'll just start with 1, 1. And then in year 2, I would have 1, I don't know, 2, 2. And then so if I just have this data and if I make a XY, you'll get this kind of a line. See what happens to this if I insert a blank row. Suddenly that middle line is gone because my chart still reads all this, but because this internal one is blank, it will kind of skip ahead and then create that X image for us. So this is the basic technique that I'm using there in conjunction with the actual data. So this is my data set. We have raw numbers here. What we need is we first need to create the product ranks, calculate the ranks, and then feed that ranks to the Power Query. So we'll try again doing the transformations. If it gets a little bit too complex or hard to explain, I'll show you the final workings. So we'll load the data. And this is how the data comes up. First up, we need to calculate the individual yearly ranks. Again, Power Query has table.add rank column or something like that, but you can only add one column at a time, and there is no menu option for that. So you would end up writing M code 3 times. As much as possible, I try to avoid writing M code. I try to use the screen option. So I'll show you the screen way to generate the rank, which in itself might be helpful for other things that you may want to do in your life. So first up, we'll select all of these, change them to whole numbers, and then select the first one, sort in sort in descending order. So this column is sorted. At this point, I'm going to add my index column from 1, and that is the 2020 rank. Then again, apply another sort order, index column, and then finally one more sort order, index column. So these columns are the rank columns. We can name this as 2020 rank, 2021 rank, and then 2022 rank. So we get 3 rank columns, and then they will show you the rank information. Once the rank information is there, essentially we do need to take this and apply the earlier logic like the way we have done, which is expand this into a table and then introduce the blank rows through the table. You could also do this with the lists, but I feel table approach is a little bit more elegant because there is only one expansion involved, and you will get that kind of a thing. So again, I have got a formula available to me in my notepad here, so I'm just going to copy paste that just to be lazy. So this is the thing. The way this expansion works is essentially you need to think a little bit about the problem here. We have got 3 years and the lines need to go like that. I wanted the lines to have a little bit of more fanciness added. What I'll do is I'll show you this as a demo here first. So oh, I think we deleted that. But if I go here, you see the line is not exactly starting there and going. I'm not drawing a straight line from this point to this point. That's not the line that we have. That's not how the line is. It has got like a little bit of bend going. So it's kind of like letter Z or something like that. So to get that, what I did is instead of one line, I draw like this. So that is one segment of the line. And then the next segment kind of goes up to here. And then the third segment kind of goes from here to there. So this is how that thing is drawn. So essentially, if we imagine this as being 0.1 on the x-axis, so from 1 to 2 we maintain the course, and then from 2 until 5 we kind of jump, and then from 5 to 7 we maintain, and then from 7 onwards we jump again. So that will create that kind of a jagged pattern. Again, to get this is where the table formula is a little bit more complicated than normal. So we have got one row that tells the x coordinates, and the x coordinates are not continuous. They go 1, 2, and then 6, 7. So we skip out all the 4, 5, 3, 4, 5, and then skip out to 6, 6, 7, 8. It maintains the course, and then from 8 it again jumps 4 points. So that's where the line has a little bit of slope and all of that. And then the last one is null because we wanted to have a blank row so that once one line is drawn, it skips out to the next line. And the values are from 2020 rank, kind of like that. And you might think, oh, what is the point of bubble? This is because I also wanted to show a small circle where the points are going from one rank to another, and then print the product name inside using labels. So that's where I have got an extra series called bubble and label that will help me with that. Basically just using the product name. So once this table is there, we can expand it and we will have that. And again, same as earlier, we don't need the original columns anymore. I can remove all of those, and I have got X, Y, bubble and label. And then you can load this up to a new worksheet, and then you will get the expanded table. We're going to try this and then see how that looks. Insert XY. So that looks beautiful. Like you can see the metro map kind of a thing going on. And I'm using XY connected lines with the markers. We don't need the markers, we just need the lines. And instead of markers everywhere, I want a marker here. That's where that bubble series comes up. Wherever the marker is, that is the corresponding label. So this is pretty much how that one there is done. Once that is done, I have done a little bit more to add these extra access labels at the bottom to show what year that is, and then show it. You can take this even further, which is again a little bit amusing, but you might find it valuable for some other scenarios by even highlighting an individual line segment by filtering the corresponding line using the filter function and then feeding that as an alternate series. So I can highlight for a specific product like product C and then see how that has changed, generate some meaningful text that says product C went from rank 5 to rank 2 in 2022, or even write more descriptive stories about that using formulas and whatnot. But that's really what it is. I'm sure someone will always say these are not impossible charts. These are merely cumbersome charts to make. But the whole idea here is that many times we look at the data and then we think to make a chart, our alternatives are just formulas or pivot tables, or maybe VBA, but you don't have to. You can also think, oh, maybe I could use Power Query to reshape the data and then use that to generate the chart. The only downside with Power Query approach is if your data changes, you must remember to refresh. Otherwise, your chart and data would be out of sync. But nowadays we are using Power Query for everything, so we are used to the whole refresh paradigm anyway. So you're not really missing out on much in that space. All right, let's see if there is any questions or any thoughts.
Chandoo, you've got one question from Henry asking, how do you handle equal ranks using your index column? Because the index that you're using obviously is doing a separate number on each line. So what if two numbers come up the same? What then?
I think the index number that we are adding through Power Query just goes continuous. So if two values are same, I don't know exactly what Power Query does. It probably picks up the one that is closer to the top and puts them top. It shouldn't really matter. Like but here, because we are just ranking, that is fine. But if you want to have a little bit more complicated ranking, you could use the table rank column function. This is something that that has an optional comparator that you could probably build, or you can also specify how you want to rank things. So here you can see that when you use that, it would give same rank for both products rather than making one of them 1 and one of them 2 with the index column. So that is another approach. You could.
I'm just wondering what that would actually do to your chart, Chandoo, because then you'd have two things. You'd have a diverging line coming out of a single bubble, wouldn't you?
In this case, I don't think so. We can try it out. I have not extensively tested these ones, but why not? We'll just test this. So we make these two same. And refresh. It doesn't matter because the index number just adds different numbers for each row anyway. That's the nature of index numbers, isn't it?
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking. If you went into something like a standard competition ranking where you ended up with two points that came up to the same number,
if you want to have same rank, then this is our choice. We could use the add rank column and then use the competition style ranking, and that would pretty much make both of them same. The only problem that I found with this is you cannot add multiple columns. You must write this entire M code for each type of rank you want to generate. So it didn't seem like a huge thing. Yeah, but if you are going that extra step, you might as well do that.
There you go. Hopefully that helps, Henry. I guess it depends a little bit on what you actually want your chart to look like, but there you go. The only other question that I saw in here, Chandoo, was just around your sample file as well. Whether or not you'll be sharing that with us, of course.
Yes, I will. So I've already uploaded the workbook prior to the presentation. So all the manual work that we did, like what we built in this page, won't be there. But this is replicated here anyway in a different context. So I'll put that in the chat, and then feel free to take that link and share it among your audience later on. But that's the file that you're seeing here.
Excellent. Cool. All right. Are there any other questions that anybody has for Chandoo related to this? And I mean, you can ask via the chat, or if somebody wants to put their hand up and ask in person, that works too. I think we're open for questions, aren't we, Chandoo?
Yeah.
All right. This is where things get quiet because you blew everybody's mind and they don't know what to say. So.
Let's just see.
John's going to give you feedback. There you go.
I do a lot of this stuff, prepping the data range using VBA or using formulas or whatever, and I have not done very much with Power Query to generate these data ranges. And now I'm thinking, why have I not?
Well,
okay.
If I have made you start thinking about this, I think my mission is met. This is officially the impossible chart.
Oh, coming to Power Query, as Ken will attest to, and these are not impossible charts; they're difficult charts. But using Power Query to prep the data is a dimension that I haven't considered yet, and I think I need to do that.
I think it's fair to say, though, that they're impossible charts for normal humans, right? I mean, you know, the reality here is, and this is complicated stuff that you're doing in here, and I mean, building a chart like this is not something that you just knock off out of the box and hit the insert button. You got to work at this, and it takes a level of understanding around just, you know, what does a blank row do? What does a blank cell do? How is it treated? I got to tell you personally, I mean, one of the things that I found fascinating in this, Chandoo, is I've actually never seen table from rows used before. And for you to go through and actually, like, you know, bust that out and you know, break out the entire table that's there. John will tell you, I mean, I remember years ago sitting in a hotel room in Auckland trying to prep data using Power Query to drive a waterfall chart before, so that we could do some comparisons there. And it was just a nightmare to try and get into the right format. And I'm looking at it going, where has table from rows been all my life? That would have made it so easy, right? But yeah, no, it's very, very cool. Very cool.
Yeah, thank you. I did use this for some other work before, but I never really talked about this. So yeah, I think we kind of went with a little bit of clickbaity title for the meetup, but I did deliver on some aspects of it. Like, okay, this is something that you would have easily given up earlier trying to replicate, but now you have a way to do it.
Yeah, no, that's very, very cool stuff. So what's Henry says he appreciates the difficult charting is one very innovative use of Power Query. The hidden power in Power Query table pattern generating the function, which may have other use cases in charting. Yeah, that table from rows, I agree. I think that that's actually got some huge use cases there, and I love seeing it in the charting aspects of it. But I've been thinking the whole time as you've been showing that, I'm like, what other Power Query patterns can I unwind now if I know that, right? I mean, it's kind of a neat thing. So I agree, Henry.
Yeah.
I think there's some huge functionality there. Got me thinking.
Yeah, because many times we want to expand a raw data, but if I use a list, then it duplicates. So using a table option would mean we can force nulls or stack it out or do the other way around as well. But this is in itself is quite useful as too.
For sure. Linda says amazing as always, Chandoo. Dude, I got to agree. Very, very cool stuff.
Thank you.
Fantastic. So, are there any other questions? We'll throw out one last call for questions here for Chandoo before we wind up for the evening. So if there's anything that is top of mind, by all means, throw up your hand or throw something into the chat here. Yeah, I mean, if there aren't any other questions, then we'll say thanks again, Bud, for coming and doing this. I appreciate it. It's I don't know why it took me so long to get you on the show, but I'm really glad that we did, and we're going to definitely have you back. Hey, there's a question. Can the XY chart be combined with a bubble chart?
The bubble charts are probably the trickiest ones because I don't think they can be combined with anything. John might be able to kind of put the nail in that coffin, but
a bubble chart can only be a bubble chart, and there's tricks to make an XY chart look like a bubble chart, and you use something like VBA or whatever to make the markers larger in an XY chart. But that's kind of what a bubble chart does.
Yeah, that's bubble charts are probably the only ones that can't be really mixed. Weirdly enough, you can mix a bar chart with a pie chart or something like that.
It's ugly, but if you want to add an XY series to draw a line, to draw, I mean, a bubble chart will accommodate a trend line, but if you want to do a custom trend line or some other data that you have elsewhere in your worksheet, a bubble chart can't do that.
Yeah, there you go.
Awesome. All right, well, I'm going to shut down the recording for today, and I will get this meetup posted up within the next 48 hours on the ScaleWave YouTube channel. Again, thanks, Chandoo, for a fantastic presentation. Really appreciate it. Definitely eye-opening, and has got me thinking, as I think a bunch of the other folks here as well. And yeah, I mean, we'll definitely get you back on the show when you can even create us even more mind-blowing charts and whatnot. Oh, there we go. All right, let me shut the recording down on this one, and yeah, hopefully, don't forget, folks, there's meetups coming up. We will see you at the next one.